Hi, I'm Sue Stockdale, your Access to Inspiration host. This is a podcast with a social mission to help you be inspired by people who may be unlike you. As always, we hope their experiences and insights cause you to reflect on your own perspectives about the world. Well, my guest today in episode 88 is Nic Parmaksizian, Global CEO of Designit. Nic explains to me how leaders can create environments that encourage innovation, what he does to create an amazing place to work for the creative talent in his organisation, and also what he would like to be designed for the world. Welcome to the podcast, Nic. It's great to speak to you today.
Thank you for having me, Sue. It's really great to reconnect with you.
There are two words that really remind me of you, Nic. One is creativity and the other is innovation. And I think they've been the threads that have woven their way through your career to date, both in terms of businesses that you've worked in and focused on and how you lead. At least that's the sense I get. I wonder if you would agree with me or not.
Yes, certainly. I think creativity and innovation have been a passion of mine. They've been, certainly when it comes to creativity and imagination, they've been constants in my life as far as I can remember. I grew up in a relatively artistic household and family, and where I think imagination was always encouraged. And so that really stayed with me, where I've always needed to think big ideas and create. And I can't really tell you that was part of a plan, but this creativity that essentially is turned into active innovation work and helping clients really transform their organizations and transform their markets by leveraging the power of ideas to innovate has actually become my reality today. And it's been the case for a number of years, as you said, Sue. So yes, I would agree with you, but I wouldn't say that was ever part of a plan. I think things naturally evolved in this way.
It's funny how you're describing that. It sounds like it was an emergent career to date.
It sort of really is. And I think that the beauty of hindsight is being able to look at things and the choices you've made and not necessarily understand why you made the choices that you made at the time, but actually have a very associative mind. So I connect things and I try to find patterns. And when I look at the choices that I made, which often were against what people thought would be the rational option, big picture sort of makes sense to me. And I can see how all of those elements and career choices and roles that I've taken have really contributed to having this sort of career narrative around creativity and innovation and imagination and, really talking to people about tapping into their intuition, because intuition and gut for me have been, as you know, I think you and I have had a coaching relationship. Intuition and gut have kind of been omnipresent with me as well in my decision process. And as a CEO now of a relatively large business, I'm being surrounded, and I've made sure to be surrounded by rational people who can advise me. I still try to make sure that I can still tap into that little voice, that intuition, to help me guide when I come to make decisions.
You also mentioned the word rational there, Nic. And I think you and I met first when you were operating in the banking sector, which is perhaps not one that would spring to mind, first of all, thinking about creativity and innovation. When you've worked in sectors that are more traditional in their thinking, how have you encouraged people to use their imagination and to think about what's possible?
Yes, and that's why I often get hired, is to essentially facilitate that process. And you talk about financial services. This is an industry where people are essentially incentivized to managing risk and profitability and making the right investment decisions. And suddenly you're asking them to start to think outside the box and really think big ideas to drive breakthrough innovation in order for you to compete with this emerging fintech industry that's been obviously competing with traditional banks. That is not easy. And there are a number of things in my experience that need to be in place. Number one, there needs to be a clear mandate from the top that this is a priority and that leadership will create an environment where people, number one, will have the time But number two, we have the opportunity and the safety net that they need to be able to innovate. The third thing that needs to be in place is this doesn't happen at the individual level. I mean, most of the time, those individuals, those bankers come together as part of a team or a pod through the course of a project or an engagement. And again, I think, really getting that team to norm and perform is really critical. So team dynamics and multidisciplinary teams is often one thing that gets discussed in the innovation literature. But having people coming together with different backgrounds and different agendas and different experiences, while it makes sense on paper, in practice can be very challenging. And it's very hard for people to sort of step out of their day-to-day job and start to think on behalf of the user, on behalf of the customer. So again, all are things that need to be in place for you to really create an environment that is conducive to innovation. Because innovation, as you know, is not just about coming up with ideas. It's also about following up on those ideas and making sure that they land, there is execution behind them. I have clients and actually banking clients who unfortunately are caught into this prototyping wheel where they will basically spend a lot of efforts and investment. In some instances, I have a client that has 90 prototypes running a year, but nothing ever get to market. And so making sure that you have the entire end-to-end process in place for innovation is critical. And having all of those elements in place from a leadership point of view, from a team, from an organizational behavior point of view is also critical. And I often talk about the necessity of, as leaders and as practitioners, to almost have this ambidexterity of being able to do your day job, but also think about tomorrow. While the decisions that you might make today might not be aligned with the decisions that are required for tomorrow, still being comfortable in navigating those tensions. And that, again, I think requires coaching. It requires support, and it requires an environment and an organizational climate that is supportive of that. And that's one thing that obviously, in my experience, at least financial organizations have struggled with.
Now, given that it may be more challenging in the financial services space to introduce innovation, now that you're global CEO of Designit, I'm imagining, therefore, you've got much greater influence on how you introduce innovation and disrupt. How do you, as a leader, go about encouraging the very thing that you want to have happen in your own organization?
I basically role model the behaviors that I know are to be critical for an organization to be able to innovate, starting with being myself. So being authentic in my leadership, talking the truth and being transparent. Sometimes a leader can find themselves in this sort of parent-child relationship, and I'm trying to make sure that we are talking as equals, as adults, and are doing the right thing to the business. So again, role modeling, being authentic, being able to have the right conversations, presenting the facts and being transparent around the choices that we are making. And as I was saying earlier, creating an environment that is conducive to thinking, fresh ideas, providing that time and a capacity, but also the safety of being able to think differently. I think also the point I was making around the power of teams, making sure that you are doing everything you can as a leader to remove the blockers that might be in the way of collaboration. I often encourage colleagues from different countries, different studios, from Stockholm to Madrid, for example, or Tel Aviv to Tokyo, to come together and really collaborate to the benefit of a client, to the benefit of an idea. As a leader, what I try to do is lead from the front, lead by example, role model the behaviors that I would want to see from everybody else. And I very much see my role as an enabler. So I often say to the team, I work for you. As a matter of fact, I'm the CEO, but you pay my salary. So I'm here to empower you. I'm here to make sure that I remove the things that might hold you back, that might hold your creativity back, and really free them to be themselves and to do what they do best, which is to create. I often find that, for example, there's nothing worse when you are putting a creative person into the wrong role. So certainly in my experience in the past, I've had creative directors moving into management roles, and it was almost the wrong choice for them in the sense that that was not necessarily the best fit. And they were also getting frustrated for not being able to create. So having the right people in the right roles and making sure that everybody has a platform to be able to create is very important. And this is what I try to do in my role today as CEO of Designit.
I think you're describing it very clearly for the listener there in terms of what you have to see it to be it. And if you're role modeling, that's an important thing for the employees. For those that haven't come across Designit before, what does the company do? And I'm wondering if you can give us some example of the types of successes that you've had.
Yes, absolutely. So we are a innovation and design agency, and we work with some of the most well-known brands around the world and across many industries. So whether it's in the hospitality, aviation industry, healthcare and life science industry, financial services, we really help clients not only reinvent products, but critically reinvent experiences as well. So for example, we work with a well-known pharmaceutical company around redesigning the experience for some of their patients, for example, around the ALS disease, the motor neuron disease. I've also worked in the product space, again, in the pharmaceutical sector, in developing the next generation insulin pen. We work with financial services sector to be launching new digital features that help the mass market individual get access to investment advice that would perhaps be more dedicated to another segment. In the past, we work with the aviation industry to reinvent the passenger experience. So there's a huge amount of creativity that goes into hopefully really shaping a better world as well through the power of our ideas. So we're trying to be very true to our purpose, which is to ignite shared progress. We make sure that we invest our creative time and energy in industries and sectors and projects that sort of make sense and are aligned to our values as well. And we always have sustainability at the heart of what we do. So again, from a design point of view, making sure that our products, services, experiences have built-in sustainability as well.
It's interesting that you say that, Nic. It's bringing into the conversation for me purpose as well as profit and having the world as a stakeholder for some of the things that you're doing. Is that the way that you'd be thinking?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, and I often need to remind myself and remind the teams as well that we are in this for the long run. And so this is a marathon. This is not a race. We are not going after quick fixes when it comes to profits, when it comes to revenue growth. I think it's really about investing into the future by making the right choices when it comes to clients, work that you can be proud of, because that work will then help you attract the next generation talent that you need, as well as bring the type of clients that you want. So it's a fine balance. Obviously, you want to be financially independent. You want to be able to control your own destiny from a financial point of view. But at the same time, it's a balance with doing the right thing, choosing the right work, building those products and services that you want to be proud of, that you can use as references for the future. I think to me, this point about, again, back to the ambidexterity between profitability today while thinking about your profits for tomorrow is very important. And I find that sometimes one can compromise the other.
I'm wondering if that means that you ever say no to taking on client work.
Absolutely, we do actually. There are some sectors that we won't be working with, like for example, the tobacco industry. So we actually have internally a team that holds me accountable as a CEO, and that team is made of colleagues from all levels to make sure that the decisions that I make and the rest of the leadership makes in terms of the clients that we choose to work with and the projects that we aim to win are aligned with purpose and values. I think for that team to represent 900 people across all levels and cultures is very important to us, because our most important assets are our people and our brand and reputation. So we want to make sure that your people are proud of the work that they do, and that's reflecting the way people perceive your brand externally and your reputation.
It's interesting that sometimes it's as much about what you choose not to do as much as what you choose to do that can make the difference. You've mentioned there again about the importance of people within the organization. And I'm just wondering, in terms of this current theme for the series for us is around health and well-being. I'm wondering if there's anything explicit that the organization does to support the health and well-being of its people so they can be at their best and be creative and innovative?
Yeah, that's obviously top of mind, especially following the hard years that we've had, where beyond the risk of being infected by a virus, there is obviously the whole anxiety and stress that comes on top of it. And so for us, having flexibility in the way people choose to work is very important. Most of our work is done virtually. I mean, we do have 15 studios around the world. And if people choose to do so, they can obviously meet and get together. But at the same time, we absolutely are encouraging, like our people in North America, for example, most of them are working virtually, so much so that we don't really use our studios there. That's number one. Again, from a well-being point of view, giving people access to learning, I find is very important. It's all very well to be coming in and doing your work, but especially with creative people, I find that providing great learning opportunities is really important. So that goes into well-being. I feel that I'm learning. I feel that I'm developing myself. And there is nothing worse than feeling like you're being stuck. And so making sure that people have those learning opportunities is very important to us. I think the third thing is, for our top talent, what we also try to do is we give them their Friday to be able to follow an interest and a passion of theirs, because we believe that those interests and those passions will in turn benefit the rest of the organization as well when they turn into a point of view, or they turn into an asset, they turn into a prototype. So we try to give people the time, to the point about innovation, the time to be able to think, to be able to reflect, and to be able to in turn innovate. I think that goes into this feeling like I'm adding value, I'm contributing, I'm able to follow interests and passions of mine, which in turn helps with your well-being and your mental health. So those are things that those are things that come to mind to me when I think about well-being for our is.
Now, if any of our listeners are senior leaders in organizations and they're thinking, well, Nic, that sounds fine, but I can't afford a day's worth of my employees' time to work on something of their own interest, what would you say to skeptics listening that don't currently think the way that you do?
Well, first of all, it's not like the whole organization, right? So what we've done is we've very much created this scheme as, I suppose, an incentive for our top performers. So our top 20% will sort of get access to this scheme. But what I would say is that your people are your best asset, and you want to invest. When you think about all of the marketing investment you could be doing to building your brand, when you think about all of the time you might be spending haphazardly to develop a new point of view or a new asset, being actually quite structured about it and saying, I need this no matter what. What I'm selling is intellectual capital. So as an investment, I'm going to ring-fence the time that we need and structure it so that we can actually go to market with something that makes sense, that's aligned with people's interests, passions, and values, which, by the way, is often reflective of what the rest of the world is thinking. I think to me, that's just an obvious investment. Plus, I often say, I'm the worst person to be putting in front of the press. I mean, I'm not that interesting. I think that those people who have a point of view are the right people to be talking and to be advocating and to be influencing really the world. And also, it's an incredible incentive for our junior colleagues to have access to a platform that enable them to get their voices heard. So I think there is so much in the way of benefiting the organization in turn, where people are contributing, and they are contributing by doing something that they are interested in. They have the time for it. They are getting access to a channel that's going to amplify their voice and point of view. And in turn, people are engaged. It's great.
Most of what you've been saying so far has been very much around what you're doing for your people in the organization. I'm wondering about you now, and given that this podcast is called Access to Inspiration, where do you get your inspiration from?
So I mentioned, I think, at the start that, I have an associative mind. So the way I learn is by being exposed to stimuli in my environment. So whether they are through observation or through reading or through communicating with others, the way I get inspired is by making connections and finding patterns and maybe seeing things that otherwise wouldn't be obvious. I often wonder when I go to an art gallery, why is it that at the opening of a show, 90% of the audience are other artists? Until I sort of come to realize that actually to be able to create and to get inspired, you need to expose yourself to as many stimuli as possible. And so I try to do the same. I try to find the time to expose myself to a wide variety. I mean, at the expense sometimes of my entourage, who will accuse me of being a bit hyperactive in that way. I never seem to be able to rest. My mind is always curious to learn and to find out and to question things. So getting access to different pieces of data. I'm actually doing a doctorate as well in parallel because I started it last year, and I found that having the structure of an academic program as well helps my mind to learn new things and make associations with the practical reality of my job and the concrete life that I live. And so that's how I get inspired, by connecting things and people.
Sounds like you're a busy man.
I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way.
And if you could just come up with any idea to design something for the world, something that you think we need right now,
what would I want to be designed for the world? I mean, I think there are many things in the world that need design input in the way of improving things. I think the whole democratic process, for example, and the way that democracy happens, I think to me is a really interesting journey and process that we take for granted. And I think is very much at risk and probably would benefit from being looked at and thought through. So the way we essentially get access to information and the way we as democratic citizens get to cast our votes and how we hold those power to account as well, I think is really interesting. And I think that design has a great role to play in making sure that there is more transparency, there is more accountability, that people find it easy to be able to vote, that they have all of the information that they need to be able to make their decisions in terms of casting their democratic voice and being heard. Yeah, so I'm just sort of thinking out loud, but I would love that. So if anyone is a taker, I would love any nation out there looking to rethink the democratic process. Yeah, I think that would be so interesting, but also so needed.
And finally, Nic, if you were looking back at what you know now and giving your 14-year-old self some advice for life, what would be that wisdom that you would offer the young Nic?
I think don't be afraid to listen to your own voice and your gut. Certainly being French, the French education system doesn't really encourage you to think in those sort of non-linear ways. I think it's all about being rational and sequential in your thinking. I think it's okay to sense things differently. And even if you can't really articulate the why, just being able to go for it because that's how you feel it should be is fine, because there is no bad decision. I think in the end, everything sort of makes sense.
Well, maybe there's another opportunity for a redesign of the French education system in the future too.
Well, that was a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, Sue.
And if people want to find out more about you and the work that you do, Nic, how might they do that?
Well, they can certainly connect with me on LinkedIn. So, hopefully we'll make this available through this podcast, and anyone looking to connect and exchange ideas, and always very open to that. So thank you for that opportunity.
Wonderful. Well, it's been fascinating to speak to you today. You've certainly stimulated my thinking in the conversation. So it's been lovely to speak to you.
Thank you so much. It was great. Thank you, Sue.
Well, I hope you enjoyed what Nic had to say, and maybe it's inspired you to think about aspects of our society that could be redesigned. Remember, you can subscribe to the podcast, and you can also keep connected with us on social media. We're on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Just search for Access to Inspiration, or hop on over to the website to read the transcription for this and all the other episodes that we have. Our website is accesstoinspiration.org. Next week, my guest for the final episode in this series is Alex Vondenhever, who is a wildlife tracker, and he will be explaining about the skills that are needed to track lions, leopards, jaguars and wolves in some of the world's wildest environments. I hope you could join us then.